On the expansive horizon of human existence, unseen forces intricately weave the threads of our lives with a captivating grace. Among these, two powerful energies stand out: love and friendship. As ancient as humanity itself, these forces navigate us through the labyrinth of our days, filled with profound mysteries, fleeting joys, and the promise of transcendence. Ralph Waldo Emerson, with the sharp insight of a philosopher and the heart of a poet, explores these two influences as if they were twin stars illuminating the soul's journey toward eternity. In this profound work, Emerson invites us to transcend conventional understandings of love and friendship, urging us to elevate our perspective to a higher plane where these connections are not mere attachments between bodies, but bridges between spirits. Here, love transcends mere passion, and friendship evolves beyond simple camaraderie. They emerge as universal truths, potent in their purity, capable of transforming individuals into beings of sublime greatness. With his signature style, rich in beauty and contemplation, Emerson transports us to a realm where love seeks to liberate rather than possess, and where friendship becomes a powerful catalyst for growth and transcendence, not just a comfortable refuge. Every word pulsates with the promise of awakening, revealing that within every authentic relationship lies something immortal and divine, waiting to be unearthed. Now, prepare your mind, dear reader, for an intellectual and emotional odyssey that will guide you to the essence of what it means to be human. In the pages that follow, love and friendship emerge as celestial forces, drawing us toward a greater destiny. Emerson, like a wise beacon, lights the path to the profound truth that in true love and authentic friendship we discover the very essence of life itself. Love was to me like a hidden gem my radiant beam revealed. Every promise of the soul has countless realizations, each of its joys ripens into a new longing. Nature, unstoppable, fluid and foresighted, in the first feeling of goodness, already anticipates a kindness that will lose all particular aspects in its general light. The introduction to this happiness lies in a private and tender relationship between two beings, which is the charm of human life. Like a certain frenzy and divine enthusiasm, it seizes man at a given time and operates a revolution in his mind and body, binding him to his race, engaging him in domestic and civic relations, and leading him to experience a new sympathy. Nature then increases the power of the senses, opens the imagination, and adds to its character heroic and sacred attributes. It establishes marriage and gives permanence to human society. The natural association of the feeling of love with the attachment of blood seems to require that, to describe it in vivid colors, every young girl should confess that they are faithful to their thrilling experience, and one should not be too old. The delightful fantasies of youth reject the slightest touch of mature philosophy, as if they cool with age and pedantry their flourishing crimson. Thus, I know that I incur the charge of hardness and unnecessary stoicism from those who compose the court and parliament of love. But from these formidable censors, I will appeal to my elders, for it must be considered that this passion we speak of, although it begins with the young, does not abandon the old, or rather, it does not allow any of its true servants to age. It involves the elderly just as much as the tender young girl, albeit in a different and nobler way. For it is a fire that, igniting its first embers in the restricted corner of a private breast, torn from a wandering spark of another private heart, shines and grows until it warms and radiates upon multitudes of men and women, upon the universal heart of all, and thus illuminates the whole world and all of nature with its generous flames. It matters not whether we try to describe passion at 20, 30, or 80 years old. One who depicts it at the first period loses certain later traits. One who depicts it at the last loses certain earlier traits. It remains only to hope that with patience and with the help of the muses, we store this inner vision of the law that depicts true love as always young and beautiful, so central that it recommends itself to the eye from all angles. And the first condition is that we must abandon a too close and persistent adherence to facts and study the feeling as it has appeared in hope and not in history. For every man sees his own life disfigured as the life of man is in his imagination. Every man sees on his own experience a certain stain of error, while that of others seems just and ideal. If a man recalls those delightful relationships that make the beauty of his life, that have given him the most sincere instruction and nourishment, he will withdraw and groan. Alas, I do not know why, but countless bitter constraints in adult life tarnish the memories of burgeoning joy and cover every loved man. Everything is beautiful viewed from the perspective of intellect or truth, but everything is bitter if one considers experience in detail or melancholic. The plan is visible and noble. The world is real. The painful realm of time and place inhabits worry, cancer, and fear. With thought, with the ideal, there is immortal hilarity, the rose of joy. Around it sing all the muses, but pain clings to men, to people, and to the partial interests of today and yesterday. The strong inclination of nature is seen in the proportion that this subject of personal relationships usurps in social conversation. What do we wish to know about any person worthy of our interest other than what has transpired in the history of this feeling? What books circulate in libraries? How we shine on those novels of passion when the story is told with some spark of truth and nature? And what captures our attention most in life? Any exchange that betrays the effect between two parties. Perhaps we have never seen them before, and we will never see them again, but we see them exchange a glance or betray a deep emotion, and we are no longer strangers. We understand them, and we are interested in the development of their romance. All humanity loves a lover. The first demonstrations of kindness and amiability are the most attractive images of nature, the dawn of civility and grace in what is raw and rustic. The rough village boy mocks the girls at the school gate, but then he runs to the entrance and encounters a beautiful young girl who is packing her bag. He holds her books to help her, and all of a sudden it seems to him that she moves infinitely away from him and becomes a sacred sanctuary. Among the multitude of young girls he runs with a certain roughness, but only one of them draws him away. And these two little neighbors, so close just a moment ago, have learned to respect each other's individuality, who can avert their eyes from the attractive, half-sour and bland manners of the schoolgirls who go to the country shops to buy a skein of silk, a sheet of paper, and who talk for half an hour about nothing with the shop boy, whose broad face and good nature are evident. In the village they meet in perfect equality, in which love delights. Without any coquetry, the happy and affectionate nature of woman flows into this pretty chatter. After 30 years, the memory of these visions surpasses all other memories and is a crown upon the oldest foreheads. But here's a strange fact. It may seem to many men, upon reviewing their experiences, that they have no page more beautiful in the book of their lives than the delightful memory of certain moments when affection succeeded in conferring a charm that surpasses the deep attraction of their own truth to a set of accidental and trivial circumstances. In reflecting on it, they may discover that several elements that were not the true charm have more reality in their memory than the charm itself that had enchanted them. But regardless of our experience in the details, no man has ever forgotten the visits of that power to his heart and mind, which created all things anew, which was the dawn of music, poetry, and art, which made the face of nature shine with a pure light, and which gave morning and night varied charms. When a single tone of a voice could make the heart tremble, and when the most banal circumstance associated with a form was preserved in the amber of memory, when one became all eyes in presence and all memory in absence, when the young man transforms into a window observer, studying a glove, a veil, a ribbon, or the wheels of a carriage. No place was too solitary, no scene too silent for one who had a richer company and sweeter conversation in his new thoughts than what his old friends could offer him, even the dearest and purest. For the figures, movements, and words of the beloved are not like other images written in water, but, as Plutarch said, enameled in fire, becoming the object of study during his nightly vigils. Wherever you are never gone. You leave in her mind your vigilant eyes, and in her loving heart, both at noon and in the afternoon of life. We still throb in recalling the days when happiness was not happy enough, but had to be seasoned with pain and fear. He who said of love, "All other pleasures are worth nothing," touched the heart of the matter. When the day was no longer sufficient and the night had to be consumed in sharp memories, when the head boiled all night on the pillow with the generous exploit it had resolved to accomplish, when the moonlight was a sweet fever, the stars letters, the flowers numbers, and the air formed into songs. When all affairs seemed impertinent, and all the men and women rushing in the streets were mere images. Passion reconstructs the world for the young. It makes all things alive and meaningful. Nature becomes conscious. Every bird in the branches of the trees now sings its heart and soul, and its notes are almost articulated. The clouds have a face when he looks at them. The trees of the forest, the swaying grass and the budding flowers have awakened to a new intelligence. He almost fears to confide in them the secret they seem to invite. But nature comforts him and takes pity on him. In the verdant solitude, he finds a home more precious than among men. Springs, pathless groves, places dear to pale passion, moonlit walks, when all the birds sleep, except for the bats and owls, a midnight bell, a distant moan. These are the sounds that nourish us. There, in the forest, he no longer believes himself mad. He blossoms in a palace of sweet sounds and visions. He is twice a man, walking with arms raised, monologuing, caressing the grass and the trees. He feels in his veins the blood of violets, clover and lilies, and speaks to the brook that bathes his feet. The fires that have awakened his perception of natural beauty have made him love music and verse. It is often observed that men have written good verses under the inspiration of passion, verses they could never write in other circumstances. This same force acts upon their entire nature. It amplifies feelings, makes the rude softer, and gives heart to the coward. Even in the most lamentable and abject, it infuses heart and courage to challenge the world simply because of the face of the beloved object. In giving to another, he gives even more to himself. He becomes a new man, with new perceptions, sharper new goals, and a religious solemnity of character and intent. He no longer belongs to his family and society. He is something different. He is a person, a soul. Let us now examine a little more closely the nature of this powerful influence on youthful humanity. The beauty of which we celebrate today, the revelation in man, is welcomed like the sun, wherever it deigns to shine. It pleases all with itself and with them. It seems to suffice for itself. The lover cannot paint his beloved with his poor and solitary imagination. Like a flowering tree, so much sweetness and beauty make her a society in herself. She teaches him why beauty was represented with loves and graces by her side. Her existence enriches the world, although she excludes all other people from her attention, as if they were unworthy. But we cannot find where this delicate emotion points, this errant sparkle. Any attempt to attach it to an organization destroys it for the imagination. It does not relate to any known friendship or love relationship described in society, but, to my mind, to a completely distinct and inaccessible sphere. The relationships of delicacy and sweetness transcend what roses and violets insinuate and presage. We cannot approach beauty. Its nature is like the reflections of the necks of opaline doves that fly away and vanish. In this, it resembles the most excellent things, carrying that character of a rainbow that defies all attempts at appropriation and use. What did Jean-Paul Richter mean when he said to music, "Out, out, do not speak to me of things that, in all my infinite life, I have never found and will never find"? The same influence can be observed in any work of the visual arts. A statue is beautiful when it begins to become incomprehensible, when it escapes criticism and can no longer be defined by compass and ruler, but demands an active imagination to accompany it and to express what the god or hero of the sculptor is doing. It is always represented in a transition between what is representable to the senses and what is not. It is then that the statue ceases to be just a stone. This observation is also valid for painting, and in the case of poetry, success is not achieved when it soothes and satisfies us, but when it astonishes us and drives us to make new efforts toward the inaccessible. Landor wonders if it should not be linked to a purer state of sensation and existence. Similarly, personal beauty is first charming in itself when, without fulfilling any purpose, it becomes a never-ending story, when it suggests glimmers and visions rather than earthly satisfactions, when it makes the observer feel his own unworthiness. Even a Caesar could not feel more worthy than the firmament or the splendors of a sunset. Thus was born the expression, "If I love you, what does it matter to you?" We say this because we feel that what we love does not depend on your will, but transcends it. It is not you, but your radiance. It is what you do not know within yourself and will never know. This corresponds to that high philosophy of beauty that ancient writers cherished. They said that the soul of man, incarnated here on earth, wandered in search of that pure world from which it had come. but it was quickly blinded by the light of the natural sun and unable to see other objects than those of this world, which are but shadows of real things. Thus, the divinity sends the glory of youth to the soul so that it can use beautiful bodies as aids to remember the good and celestial beauty. The man who contemplates a person of the opposite sex rushes toward her, finding the greatest joy in contemplating her form, her movement, and her intelligence, for she suggests to him the presence of what is truly in her, the very cause of beauty. However, if, through too much conversation with material objects, the soul becomes lost and seeks satisfaction in the body, it reaps only sadness, for the body is incapable of keeping the promise that beauty has made to it. But if, by accepting the insinuation of those visions and suggestions that beauty makes to his mind, the soul transcends the body and comes to admire the traits of character, the lovers look into each other's eyes during their conversations and actions. They then enter the true palace of beauty, increasingly igniting their love for it. Through this love, by extinguishing lower affections, they purify themselves, sanctified by conversation with what is in itself excellent, magnanimous, humble, and just. The lover attains a more fervent love for these noble qualities and a quicker apprehension of them. Then he moves from loving a single person to loving them all. Thus, this beautiful soul is merely the door through which he enters the company of all true and pure souls. In this particular company of his companion, he attains a clearer vision of any stain that the beauty of the soul may have contracted in this world, and he is capable of signaling it. With this, mutual joy grows, allowing for the non-offensive display of faults and bringing help and comfort in their correction. By contemplating in several souls the traits of divine beauty, and distinguishing in each what is divine from what is stained by the world, the lover ascends to the highest beauty, the love and the knowledge of divinity, climbing step by step this ladder of created souls. Thus the true sages of love have told us throughout the ages. This doctrine is neither old nor new. If Plato, Plutarch, and Apuleius taught it, so did Petrarch, Angelo, and Milton. It awaits a more authentic unfolding, in opposition to that underground prudence that presides over marriages, mingling sublime words with an eye fixed on the ground, and whose gravest discourses still smell of ham and doughnuts. The worst is when this sensualism creeps into the education of young girls, blighting the hope and affection of human nature, teaching them that marriage is nothing more than the economy of a housewife, and that a woman's life has no other purpose. But this dream of love, though beautiful, is only a scene in our journey through the procession of the soul, always expanding like a pebble thrown into a pond, or the light radiating from a star. The rays of the soul first settle on the things closest to it, on utensils and toys, nurses and servants, the house and the courtyard, then on passers-by, the circle of family acquaintances, politics, geography, and history. But things always group according to higher or inner laws. Proximity, size, number, habits, people gradually lose their hold on us. It is the cause and effect, the real affinities, the desire for harmony between the soul and circumstances, the progressive and idealistic instinct that eventually prevails, and the return of higher relations to the lower ones is impossible. Thus, even love, which is the deification of persons, must become more impersonal every day. At first there are no hints of what is to follow. The young man and the young woman, who look at each other through crowded rooms with eyes filled with mutual understanding, think little of the precious fruit that will be born in the future from this entirely external new stimulus. The work of vegetation begins with the irritability of the bark and the leaf buds. From these exchanges of glances, one moves to acts of courtesy, gallantry, then to ardent passion, promises of commitment and marriage. Passion reaches its goal as a perfect unity. The soul is fully embodied, and the body is fully put to the test. Their pure and eloquent blood speaks through their cheeks, so clearly forged that one could almost say their bodies were thinking. Romeo said, "If I must die, let me be cut into stars to beautify the sky." Life for this couple has no other purpose. They ask for nothing but Juliet for Romeo. Night, day, studies, talents, kingdoms, religion, all are in this soulful form, in this soul that is all form. The lovers delight in tenderness, declarations of love, and comparisons of their affections. When they are alone, they take pleasure in remembering each other's image. Does he or she see the same star, the same cloud that fades? Does he or she read the same book, feel the same emotion that now fills me with wonder? They weigh and measure their affection, adding precious advantages, friends, opportunities, possessions, and exult in discovering that they would gladly give all this away to save the dear beloved head, to whom not a hair should be harmed. But the fate of humanity descends upon these children. Danger, sorrow, and pain reach them, just like everyone else. Love prays, makes pacts with eternal power for this precious companion. The union formed adds new value to every atom of nature, as it transforms every thread of the network of relationships into a golden ray and bathes the soul in a new, even sweeter element. However, it is still a temporary state. Flowers, pearls, poetry, promises, and even having another heart at home cannot satisfy the troubled soul that dwells in the flesh. In the end, it awakens from these affections as from mere toys and prepares for broader, more universal goals. The soul, present in each person's soul, yearning for perfect bliss, detects incongruities, flaws, and disproportions in the behavior of the other. From this arise surprises, disputes, and pain. However, what had drawn them to each other were the signs of beauty and virtue. These virtues are always present, even if sometimes eclipsed, reappearing to continue attracting. But the gaze changes. It leaves the sign and focuses on the substance, which repairs the wounded affection. In the meantime, as life unfolds, it becomes a game of permutation and combination of all positions of the parties, using each other's resources, knowing the strengths and weaknesses of the other. For the nature and purpose of this relationship are that they represent the whole of humanity to each other, all there is to know or to learn in the world. They are forged in the texture of man and woman. The person love brings to us resembles manna, tasting of everything. The world turns, circumstances vary each hour. The angels that inhabit this temple of the body appear at the windows, just like gnomes and vices. Yet, all the virtues are united. If virtue is present, all vices are recognized as such, confessed and shunned. Their gaze, once inflamed, calms over time in both hearts. What they lose in intensity, they gain in depth, transforming into a complete understanding. They accept without protest the good deeds that man and woman must accomplish separately in due time. They exchange the passion, which could once not divert its gaze from its object, for joyful and selfless support, whether present or absent, of each other's designs. In the end, they discover that all that had united them at first, those once sacred traits, that magical play of charms, was ephemeral. It had a prospective purpose, like the scaffolding with which the house was built. The purification of the intellect and heart year after year is the true marriage, anticipated and prepared from the beginning, and completely above their consciousness. Observing these objectives with which two people, a man and a woman so diverse and yet correlatively endowed, can find themselves in a house to spend 40 or 45 years in marital society, does not surprise me. Nor does the emphasis with which the heart prophesies this crisis from the tenderest childhood. The profuse beauty with which instincts adorn the nuptial arch, and nature, intellect, and art compete with each other to bring their gifts and melodies. Thus we prepare for a love that knows no sex, no person, no bias, but seeks virtue and wisdom everywhere to increase virtue and wisdom. We are observers by nature, and therefore apprentices. This is our permanent state, but it often makes us feel that our affections are but tents for a night. Slowly and painfully the objects of our affections change, just as those of our thoughts. There are moments when affections dominate and absorb the man, making his happiness depend on one or several people. But in health, the spirit returns to itself, with its dazzling arch scattered with galaxies of immutable lights. The burning loves and fears which engulfed it like clouds must lose their finite character and merge into God to reach their own perfection. But we should not fear losing anything in this progress of the soul. One can trust the soul until the end. What is so beautiful and appealing in these relationships will only be replaced by something even more beautiful, and so on forever. Friendship is a drop of red virile blood. The tumultuous sea surpasses the uncertain world. It ebbs and flows, but the rooted lover remains. I believed I had heard, and after so many years, the goodness shone without tiring like the daily dawn. My attentive heart became free again. No! "O friend," says my heart, "it is only for you that the sky arches, that the rose reddens. All things take a nobler form because of you, and look, beyond the earth, the round mill of our destiny appears, a path of light thanks to your courage. Your nobility has also taught me to master my despair. The sources of my secret life are beautiful through your friendship. We have so much kindness of which they speak, all the selfishness that chills the world like eastern winds. The entire human family is bathed in an element of love, like a fine ether. When we enter barely addressed but respected homes and which respect us, how many people do we see on the street, or with whom we sit in church, with whom, even in silence, we share a secret joy? Read the language of these rays coming from wandering gazes. The heart knows it. The effect of the satisfaction of this human affection is a sincere joy. In poetry and in common language, emotions of goodwill and satisfaction towards others are compared to the material effects of fire. These fine inner irradiations are as swift, if not swifter, more active and more joyous, from the most intense passionate love to the most modest goodwill. They make the sweetness of life. Our intellectual and active faculties grow with our affection. The scholar sits down to write, and all his years of meditation provide him neither a single valid thought nor a happy expression. But he must write a letter to a friend, and immediately streams of loving thoughts and words surge forth. In every house where virtue and self-respect reside, one feels the palpitation caused by the arrival of a stranger. His arrival is awaited, announced, and a worry between pleasure and pain fills every heart in the house. His arrival almost provokes fear in the good hearts ready to welcome him. The house is dusted, everything is put in order. The old cloak is exchanged for a new one, and a meal is prepared if possible. From a recommended stranger, only the good report is shared. We hear nothing but good, and he represents humanity in our eyes. He is what we hoped for, what we had imagined. We wonder how to interact with him, whether in conversation or in actions, and we are troubled by fear. Just this idea elevates the conversation. We speak better than usual, with more imagination and a richer memory. Our inner demon is temporarily appeased. For long hours we can have sincere, elegant and profound exchanges, drawn from our oldest and most secret experiences, to the point that those close to us would be surprised by our unusual capabilities. But as soon as the stranger begins to introduce his prejudices, definitions and flaws into the conversation, everything is over. He has heard the first, the last, and the best he will hear from us. He is no longer a stranger. Vulgarity, ignorance, and misunderstanding become old acquaintances. Henceforth, when he returns, he receives order, attire, and dinner, but no more heartbeats or communications of the soul. As pleasant as these moments of affection are that rejuvenate my world, as delightful as these harmonious encounters in thought or feeling are, how beautiful their steps and forms are as they approach this pulsating heart. Those who are gifted and sincere. As soon as we surrender to our affections, the earth transforms. There is no more winter or night. All tragedies, all sorrows disappear, as do all duties. Nothing fills the coming eternity except the radiant forms of loved ones. Let the soul be certain that anywhere in the universe it will meet its friend, and it will be joyful, alone, for thousands of years. This morning I woke up with a devoted prayer of thanks for my friends, both old and new. I will not name God, this beauty that appears to me each day in his gifts. I rebuke society and embrace solitude. However, I am not so ungrateful that I do not recognize the wise, the charming, and the noble spirits when, from time to time, they cross my threshold. He who listens to me, he who understands me, becomes mine, a possession forever. Nature is not so poor. It gives me this joy repeatedly. Thus we weave social threads, creating a new tapestry of relationships, and as our successive thoughts materialize, we position ourselves in a new world of our own making, and we will no longer be strangers and pilgrims on this traditional globe. My friends have come to me without my seeking them. The great God has given them to me by the ancient right of the divine affinity of virtue with itself. I meet them, or rather, it is not me, but the divinity within me and in them that breaks and abolishes the thick walls of individual character, of relationships, of age, of gender, of circumstances, in which they often seem to be confused, and now makes many into one. I owe great gratitude to the excellent friends who have led me to discover new and noble depths of the world. expanding the meaning of all my thoughts. These are new poems from the first bard, uninterrupted poems, hymns, odes, and epics. Yes, Apollo still flows and the muses still sing. Will they separate from me, or at least one of them? I do not know. But I do not fear it, for my relationship with them is so pure that we are held together by simple affinity. And since this is the genius of my social life, this same affinity will exert its energy on others as noble as these men and women, wherever I may be. I confess an extreme tenderness for nature in this regard. It is almost dangerous for me to crush the sweet poison of misplaced affections. A new person is for me a great event, and it keeps me awake at night. I have often had beautiful fantasies about people who have provided me with delightful hours, but joy ends with the day and bears no fruit. No thought arises from it, and my actions are barely modified. Should I feel proud of my friend's accomplishments as if they were my own, and feel a sense of ownership over his virtues? I feel such warmth when he is praised, like a lover when he hears the compliments about his fiancée. We overestimate our friend's awareness. His goodness seems better than ours, his nature more refined, but his temptations are fewer. Everything belonging to someone, his name, his shape, his clothes, his books, his instruments, is embellished by our imagination. Our own thoughts seem new and greater, yet the systole and diastole of the heart have their analogy in the ebb and flow of love. Friendship, like the immortality of the soul, is too beautiful to be believed. The lover, contemplating his beloved, knows in part that she is not truly what he adores, and at the golden hour of friendship, we are surprised by nuances of doubt and incredulity. We hesitate to grant our hero the virtues he embodies, and then we adore the form to which we have attributed this divine habitation. In truth, the soul does not respect men as it respects itself. According to rigorous science, all men find themselves in the same condition of infinite distance. We must fear cooling our love by seeking the metaphysical basis of this Elysian temple. Will I not be as real as the things I see? If I am, I do not fear knowing them as they are. Their essence is no less beautiful than their appearance, although it requires finer organs to grasp its perception. The root of the plant is not ugly to science, although for garlands and festoons we cut the stem, and I must risk presenting the bare fact amid these pleasant daydreams, even if it resembles an Egyptian skull at our banquet. A man who is bound to his thought conceives himself magnificently. He is aware of universal success, although marked by particular failures. No advantage, no wealth, no strength can rival him. I can only choose to trust my own poverty rather than his wealth. I cannot make your consciousness equivalent to mine. Only the star dazzles. The planet has but a faint lunar ray. I hear what you say about the admirable qualities and praiseworthy temperament of the party you are extolling, but I see well that, despite all their purple cloaks, it will not please me unless, at heart, he is a poor Greek like me. I cannot deny, O friend, that the immense shadow of the phenomenon also includes you in its painted and colored immensity. You too, compared to whom all else is shadow, are not the being as truth and justice are. You are not my soul, but an image, a reflection of it. Recently you came to me, and already you are grabbing your hat and coat. The soul does not generate friends like a tree bears leaves, and as soon as it produces new buds, the old leaf falls. The law of nature is eternal alternation. Every electrical state induces the opposite state. The soul forms a circle of friends to better know itself, or in solitude, and it remains distant for a time to exalt its conversation and society. This method reveals itself throughout the history of our personal relationships. The instinct of affection rekindles the hope of union with our companions, and the feeling of isolation that returns reminds us to pursue it. Thus, every man spends his life in search of friendship. If he were to express his true feelings, he might write a letter like the one I am about to quote to any new candidate for his love. My dear friend, if I were sure of you, sure of your ability to harmonize your mood with mine, I would no longer linger over trivialities of relationships made of comings and goings. I am not very wise. My moods are quite approachable, and I respect your genius, which is still unfathomable to me. However, I do not dare presume that you have a perfect understanding of me, and that is why you remain a delightful torment to me. Always yours, or never yours. However, these uncomfortable pleasures and subtle pains are made only for curiosity, not for life. They should not be cherished, for they are cobwebs and not true threads. Our friendships rush toward brief and poor conclusions because we have shaped them with wine and dreams rather than with the tough fiber of the human heart. The laws of friendship are austere and eternal, woven in the same way as the laws of nature and morality. But we aim for a quick and petty benefit, seeking sudden sweetness. Thus we rip the slowest ripening fruit from the whole garden of God, a fruit that must ripen under many summers and many winters. We seek our friend not with sacred reverence, but with the adulterous passion that appropriates him for ourselves. We are armed with subtle antagonisms that begin to play as soon as we meet, and they transform all poetry into bland prose. Almost all people descend to our level upon meeting. Every association is a compromise, and what is worse, the very flower and fragrance of each beautiful nature disappear the moment they draw near. What perpetual disappointment real society is, even that of the virtuous and the talented. After long anticipating our meetings, we are tormented in the present by disconcerting awkwardness, by sudden and untimely apathies, by epilepsies of the spirit and faculties at the height of thought and friendship. Our faculties play tricks on us, and both parties feel relieved by solitude. I must be equal to all my relationships. It matters not how many friends I have and how much satisfaction I find in conversation with each of them. If there is one with whom I am not equal, if I feel inferior, then all the joy of the others becomes insignificant and cowardly. I would hate myself if I made my friends a refuge. A brave warrior, famed for his battles, after 100 victories, is erased from the book of honor by a single defeat, and all he has accomplished is forgotten. Our impatience is therefore harshly reprimanded. Timidity and apathy form a hard shell that protects a devoted organism from premature maturity. It would be lost if it knew itself before some of the best souls are sufficiently mature to understand and possess it. Let us respect the natural process, which hardens the ruby over millions of years, and works in a duration where the Alps and the Andes pass like the rainbow. The good spirit of our life is not in a hurry, for audacity would be its price. Love, which is the essence of God, is not for frivolity, but for the total commitment of man. Let us not play with these childish pleasures in our greetings, but have a more austere courage. No. Let us approach our friend with bold confidence in the truth of his heart, in the unshakable breadth of his foundations. The allure of this subject is irresistible, and I momentarily set aside any narrative of secondary social benefit to speak of this chosen and sacred relationship, which is a kind of absolute, and makes even the language of love seem suspect and common, so pure and divine it is. I do not wish to treat friendships delicately, but with the greatest firmness. When they are real, they are not threads of crystal or frost, but the most solid things we know. For now, after so many ages of experience, what do we know of nature or of ourselves? Not a single step has been taken by man towards solving the problem of his destiny. In a verdict of madness lies the entire universe of men. But the sweet sincerity of the joy and peace I draw from this alliance with the soul of my brother is the same essence of which all of nature and all thought are but the bark. Blessed is the house that shelters a friend. It could well be built like an arbor or a festive arch to welcome him for a single day. Happier still is he who knows the solemnity of this relationship and honors its laws. He who presents himself as a candidate for this pact comes as an Olympian to the great games, where the firstborn of the world compete. He proposes himself for contests where time, affection, and danger are at stake, and only he will be victorious who possesses enough truth within himself to preserve the delicacy of his beauty against all these trials. The gifts of fortune may be present or absent, but all speed in this competition depends on intrinsic nobility and the disdain for trivialities. There are two elements that enter into the composition of friendship, each as sovereign as the other, to the point that I cannot discern any superiority between them, nor any reason why one should be named before the other. The first is truth. A friend is someone with whom I can be sincere. In his presence I can think aloud. I have finally met a man so real and equal that I can abandon even these garments of concealment, courtesy, and ulterior motives that men never shed. I can engage with him with the simplicity and integrity with which one chemical atom meets another. Sincerity is a luxury granted only to the highest ranks, to those who are permitted to tell the truth, for they have no one above them to please or conform to. For every sincere man, the entry of a second person begins hypocrisy. We approach our neighbor with compliments, chatter, distractions, and affairs. We hide our thoughts under well-concealed folds. I knew a man who, in a certain religious frenzy, had stripped off this garment and, omitting all compliment and triviality, spoke to the conscience of every person he met, with great insight and beauty. At first he was rejected, and all men agreed that he was mad. But persisting in this course, as he could not help himself, he gained the advantage of transforming all his relationships into true connections. No one dared to speak falsely with him or distract him with idle chatter. Everyone felt compelled by his sincerity to speak to him in the same way. Society rarely shows us its true face and eyes. It generally presents its side or back. To be in true relations with men, in a false age, is worth a bout of madness, is it not? We can almost never walk upright. Almost all the men we meet demand something of us. They want us to go along with their views. They have a reputation, a talent, a whim of religion or philanthropy that is forbidden to question and poisons all conversation. But a friend is a sane man who does not impose upon my mind, but allows me to be myself. He accepts me without demanding any conditions from me. A friend is therefore a kind of paradox in nature. I, who see nothing in nature that I can affirm exists with as much evidence as my own, now contemplate the resemblance of my being in all its height, its variety, and its repeated curiosities in a foreign form. Thus, a friend can well be considered the masterpiece of nature. The second element of friendship is tenderness. We are bound to men by all sorts of ties, by blood, by pride, by fear, by hope, by profit, by lust, by hatred, by admiration, by every insignificant and vague circumstance, but we barely believe that another can possess as much character as to bind us by love. Can another being be as blissful, and we as pure, to offer him tenderness? When a man becomes dear to my eyes, I have reached the pinnacle of fortune. I find very few things written that go directly to the heart of this question in books. Yet, I have a text that I cannot help but remember. My author says, "I propose myself faintly and without disguise to those of whom I am actually a part, and I propose myself even less to those to whom I am most devoted. I wish that friendship had feet, in addition to eyes and eloquence. It must be rooted in the ground before reaching for the moon. I want it to be a bit of a citizen before being a cherub. We blame the citizen for treating love as a commodity. It is an exchange of gifts, useful services. He watches over the sick, he carries the coffin at funerals, and loses sight of the delicacies and nobility of the relationship. But although we do not find the deity under this disguise, on the other hand, we cannot forgive the poet if he is too refined and does not base his romanticism on the civic virtues of justice, punctuality, fidelity, and piety. I detest the prostitution of the name of friendship to signify modest and worldly alliances. I prefer the company of farmers and tinmen to that of a silky and fragrant friendship, which celebrates its gatherings with frivolous demonstrations, carriage rides, and dinners at the best inns. The purpose of friendship is the most strict and intimate commerce one can imagine, tighter than all we have experienced. It is for help and comfort through all the relationships and passages of life and death. It suits peaceful days, gracious presents, and country walks, but also for rough paths, difficult journeys, shipwreck, poverty, and persecution. Friendship accompanies the impulses of the spirit and the trials of religion. It must dignify the needs and daily tasks of a man's life and embellish them with courage, wisdom, and unity. It must never become something routine and established, but remain vigilant, inventive, adding rhyme and reason to what was monotonous. One can say that friendship requires rare and precious natures, each well-tempered and happily suited, yet under certain circumstances. The poet rightly says, "Love requires that the parties be perfectly matched, but this satisfaction can only be rarely guaranteed." Some scholars in this intimate knowledge of the heart even assert that friendship can only exist in its perfection between two people alone, no more. I am not so strict in my terms, perhaps because I have never known such a high companionship as others. I prefer to imagine a circle of divine men and women linked to one another, where a superior intelligence persists. However, this law of one-to-one seems imperative for conversation, which is the practice and fulfillment of friendship. One must not mix the waters too much. The best do not blend well, just as good and bad do not mix together. I've had very useful and pleasant conversations separately with two distinct men, but if we all meet together, there will not be a single new and cordial word. Two can speak, and one can listen, But three cannot participate in a conversation of the most sincere and profound kind. In good company, there is never discourse between two on the other side of the table, like that which occurs when they are left alone. In good company, individuals fuse their selfishness into a social soul, exactly coextensive with the various present consciences. Partialities between friends or affections between brother and sister or husband and wife are not relevant, but rather the opposite. Only those who know how to navigate the common thought of the group can speak, and they do not limit themselves to their own narrow views. However, this convention that common sense demands destroys the high freedom of great conversation. There must be an absolute flow of two souls into one. There are no two men who, once alone together, do not enter into simpler relationships. Yet, it is affinity that determines who should converse. Men without connection give each other little mutual joy. They will never guess each other's latent powers. Sometimes we speak of a great talent for conversation, as if it were a permanent attribute of certain individuals. But conversation is an ephemeral relationship, nothing more. A man has the reputation for having thought and eloquence, but that does not mean he can say a word to his cousin or his uncle. Sometimes, his silence is blamed as justly as one would reproach a clock in the shadow of the sun for not telling the time among those who watch it. He will find his tongue in good company. Friendship demands this strange balance between resemblance and antipathy, which makes each one drawn to the presence of the other's power and consent. It would be better to leave me alone until the end of the world than to have a friend who, by a word or a glance, would exceed his true sympathy. I feel just as unsettled by antagonism as by conformity. Let him always remain himself, without faltering for a moment. The only joy I have in not having him as mine is that what is not mine may become mine. I detest, when I seek a masculine impetus or at least a masculine resistance, to find a mush of concessions. It is better to be a nettle in your friend's side than his echo. The condition that the highest friendship requires is the ability to do without it. This high calling demands great and sublime natures. One must be two before being one. Let it be an alliance of two great and formidable natures, mutually contemplated, mutually feared, before recognizing the deep identity that, under these disparities, unites them. Only he who is magnanimous, who is sure that greatness and goodness are always economical, is fit for this society. He who is not in a hurry to interfere in his fortune must not meddle in this affair. One must allow the diamond its ages to grow and not hope to hasten the birth of what is eternal. Friendship requires a kind of religious treaty. We speak of choosing our friends, but it is the friends who choose themselves. Reverence is a large part of this relationship. Treat your friend as a spectacle. Of course, he has merits that do not belong to you and that you cannot honor. If you must have him near you, make room for him. Give space to those merits. Let them accumulate and expand. Are you the friend of your friend's buttons or of his spirit? For a great heart, he will always remain a stranger in 1,000 details in order to draw closer in the most sacred domain. Let young girls and young boys consider a friend as property, and let them suck a brief and all-powerful pleasure from it rather than the noblest benefit. We should earn our entry into this circle through a long trial. Why should we profane noble and beautiful souls by intruding upon them? Why insist on hurried personal relationships? Why go to his house or know his mother, brother, and sisters? Why be visited by him at your home? Are these things material to our pact? Set aside this contact and friction. Let him be to me a spirit, a message, a thought, a sincerity, a glance from him. I do not want news. I can obtain politics, discussions, and conveniences from neighbors or more common companions. Should we not regard the company of our friend as poetic, pure, universal, and great, like nature itself? I should feel that our bond is sacred in comparison to this bank of clouds resting on the horizon or this tuft of waving grass that divides the stream. Let us not belittle it, but rather elevate it to that level. This great defiant gaze, this disdainful beauty in his bearing and in his action. Do not complain by diminishing him, but rather strengthen him and realize him. Adore his superiority. Do not wish for less from him by a thought, but on the contrary cherish them and count them all. Keep him as your counterpoint. Let him always be for you a kind of beautiful, untamed enemy, devoutly revered, and not a trivial convenience that will soon be surpassed and cast aside. The nuances of the opal and the light of the diamond do not reveal themselves if the eye approaches too closely. To my friend I write a letter, and from him I receive the same thing. Does this seem little to you? For me it is enough. It is a spiritual gift worthy of him to give and of me to receive. He does not profane anyone. In these warm lines the heart will confide in a way that the tongue could never do, and it will pour forth the prophecy of a more pious existence than that of all the annals of heroism. Respect the sacred laws of this community to avoid harming its perfect flourishing. Through your importance and his openness, we must be ourselves before being those of others. There is at least this satisfaction in crime, as the Latin proverb says, you can speak to your accomplice on equal terms. At first, towards those we admire and love, we are incapable of doing so. However, the slightest defect in self-esteem corrupts, in my opinion, any relationship. There can never be profound peace between two minds, nor mutual respect, as long as in their dialogue each does not represent the entire world. What is as great as friendship? Let us carry it with the greatness of spirit that is possible for us. Let us keep silence so that we may hear the whisper of the gods. Let us not intrude. Who has ever stopped to think about what they should say to the chosen souls, or how to say anything to them? However ingenious, elegant, or sweet it may be, there are countless degrees of madness and wisdom, and for you to say something would be frivolous. Wait, and your heart will speak. Wait until the essential and the eternal dominate you, until day and night speak through your lips. The only reward for virtue is virtue itself, and the only way to have a shared self is to be it. You will not approach a man by entering his house. If you do not, his soul will only flee faster from you, and you will never reach a true gaze from his eyes. We see the noble from afar, and they repel us. Why should we intrude further? Much later we realize that no arrangement, presentation, or social habit will suffice to establish the relationships we desire with them, except through the emergence of nature within us, to the same degree as in them. Then we will find ourselves as water meets water, and if we do not meet them, it is because we do not want to, for we are already them. Ultimately, love is merely a reflection of a man's own worth in the eyes of others. Men have sometimes exchanged names with their friends, as if to signify that, in their friend, each loved his own being. The more we elevate our demands of friendship, of course, the more difficult it becomes to establish it with flesh and blood. We walk alone through the world. The friends we desire are dreams and fables. Yet a sublime hope always delights the faithful heart. Elsewhere, in other regions of universal power, bold and enduring souls are now acting, capable of loving us and being loved. We can rejoice that the period of novelty, follies, mistakes, and shames occurs in solitude. And when we become accomplished men, we will grasp heroic hands. We are only warned not to form hasty friendships with insignificant people where no true friendship is possible. Our impatience betrays us in hasty and foolish alliances that no God approves of. By persisting on your path, even if you lose little, you gain much. You prove yourself, placing yourself out of reach of false relationships, and you attract to yourself the firstborn of the world, those rare pilgrims who wander only one or two at a time through nature, before whom the great vulgar crowds appear as spectres and shadows. It is madness to fear that our bonds may be too spiritual, as if that could deprive us of all true love. Whatever the accuracy of our popular views drawn from insight, nature will surely support us. And although it seems to deprive us of some joy, it will return it to us with a greater joy. If we feel the absolute isolation of man, we are sure to have everything within us. We go to Europe, pursue people, or read books with the instinctive faith that they will reveal something to us, but all this is mere begging. People are like us. Europe is an old garment faded by the dead. The books are their ghosts. Let us leave this idolatry and begging behind. Let us even say goodbye to our dearest friends and challenge them by saying, "Who are you? Let me go. I will no longer be dependent." Do you not see, O brother, that we only separate to find ourselves again on a higher platform, and that we are no longer one another's because we are more ourselves? A friend has a face of Janus. He looks to the past and the future. He is the child of all my past hours and the prophet of those to come, the precursor of an even greater friend. I treat my friends like my books. I would have them where I can find them, but I rarely use them. We must have society on our own terms, admitting or excluding it at the slightest cause. I cannot afford to talk much with my friend. If he is great, he makes me so great that I cannot descend to conversation. In days of greatness, omens float before me in the sky. I must therefore dedicate myself to them. I enter to take advantage of them and exit to do the same. My only fear is losing them in the sky, where they are but a bright spot of light. Thus, even though I cherish my friends, I cannot afford to talk to them and study their visions, for fear of losing mine.